The Life of Saint Jerome by Father Largent, Chapter 7, The Last Years of Saint Jerome's Life, His Last Ordeals. In another letter, Jerome, drawing upon his resources of vehement powers of argument and vast erudition, defended the thesis which, following the example of illustrious predecessors, he had adopted. In certain parts of this letter, making an undue use of the ex absurdis argument, and imputing conclusions to his opponent which the letter would have had the right to disown, he reproached Augustine with resuscitating or abetting ancient errors. The Bishop of Hippo maintained that if Paul had sometimes practiced the law, it was not that after the coming of the Messiah he thought it necessary to salvation, but to show that he did not disapprove of it, and that if he blamed the Prince of the Apostles, it was because his conduct exposed the Christians of Gentile extraction to the danger of considering legal ceremonies as obligatory. Should this be true, exclaimed Jerome, we fall into the heresy of Cerinthius and Ebion, who believed in Christ, and who have only been anathematized by the Fathers for having added legal ceremonies to his gospel, who, although professing the new doctrine, insisted upon retaining the ancient rite. And what of the Ebionites, who call themselves Christians? To this very day, they are perpetuated in all the synagogues in the East, a sect of Minians, known as Nazarenes, whom even the Pharisees condemn. They believe in the same Christ as we, the Son of God, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, who rose again from the dead. But wishing to be both Christian and Jews, they succeed in being neither Jews nor Christians. If you thought it your duty to try to heal my sight, wound which in reality is but the prick of a needle, I beg of you to think of your own, which has every appearance of a lance thrust. Indeed, the wrong of having given in the explanation of the Scriptures, various opinions of the ancients, is not so great as that of reintroducing a perverse heresy into the Church. If we are compelled to receive the Jews with their ceremonies, if we allow them to bring the rites of the synagogue into the Church, I say most sincerely that it will not be the Jews who will become Christians, but the Christians who will become Jews. With the same eloquence and spirit, Jerome summed up the reasons which Augustine had alleged in support of his opinions, and he endeavored to show that he and his adversary were more agreed than they believed. Between your opinion and mine, the difference is small. I maintain that Peter and Paul observed, or rather pretended to observe, the ceremonies of the law for fear of vexing the Jews who had become Christians. You say that their observance of them was not artificial dissimulation, but a charitable condescension, that it was not a vain fear, but mercy which drove them to pretend to be what they were not. The lengthy answer of Jerome's adversary proves, however, that he and Augustine were less united upon this point than he would have us think. Who was there, asked the Bishop of Hippo, in whose discourses and writings I can believe, if it be true, that Paul deceived his sons? The apostles said in the beginning, I call upon God to witness, and that I am not lying in what I write you. And yet, though I know not what administrative dissimulation, he would have asserted that Peter and Barnabas were not acting uprightly according to the gospel, and that he had resisted Peter to his face because he compelled the Gentiles to conform to Judaism. Augustine passed over, as completely unfolded, the resemblance signalized by Jerome between Peter's conduct at Antioch, when he drew aside from the Christians of Gentile extraction, and that of Paul, when by prudent economy he practiced himself certain Jewish rites. Paul's whole life and teaching attests that he did not wish the Christian salvation to be thought dependent upon these practices, but neither did he wish to be suspected of holding ceremonies which had been instituted by God, and which in the divine scheme of things prefigure the glorious realities of the future, profane or idolatrous. Of the two theories, St. Augustine's was the one which prevailed, and even Jerome seems to have ended by yielding him. At the time of his contention with the Pelagians, Jerome wrote the following decisive phrase: Who can complain that he is denied what the Prince of the Apostles himself did not have? Indeed, in the face of St. Paul's distinct affirmation, nor no orthodox exegete of the present day would dare to represent the controversy of Antioch, as a result of a pre-concerted scheme between the two apostles, and as a sort of symbolical drama in which they were actors. Its true explanation is more simple. Peter thought that he should spare the prejudices of the Jews, amongst whom he was to exercise a great part of his administration, knowing that a command issued from Jerusalem was capable of raising impediments to his apostleship in the Jewish quarters of the whole world. Paul looked at things from a different standpoint. More especially, the apostle of the Gentiles, he held that the Gentile Christians should be treated with the same consideration as others. He considered that the right which after the Council of Jerusalem the Gentiles have attained to abstain from the circumcision and from the law of Moses should certainly be as much respected as the right of the Jews to retain these practices. His love for the church's liberties received a shock when he saw that Peter now seemed to disapprove of what he used formerly to practice in person. There were thus two different forms of apostolic zeal and opposition. Peter had exceeded in his condescension to the Jewish Christians, but although the leader of the apostles, he bravely and with meek humility received the warning which Paul gave him before the church of Antioch. The controversy between Jerome and Augustine ended with assurances of cordial and respectful admiration on the part of the young bishop. "I pray you," he wrote to his former antagonist, "spare me not your strictures when you think them salutary." No doubt, according to ecclesiastical rank, priesthood stands subordinate to the episcopate, but in many other things, Augustine is subordinate to Jerome. Moreover, one should neither fear nor disdain to be corrected by an inferior in rank. The difference between Augustine and Jerome had also touched upon another point, which we will merely indicate. Augustine, fearing that Jerome's translations from the Hebrews might bewilder the churches, which knew only the Septuagint, had urged him rather to translate with the utmost care the Greek version, which was consecrated by long usage and unanimous respect into Latin. Jerome, however, answered Augustine's somewhat tentative objections in the most decided manner. "Since I have corrected and translated the old version from my Greek into Latin for the benefit of those who only understand our own language," Augustine does not seem to have known this, "I do not pretend to abolish them. In my translation, I merely wished to re-establish the passages suppressed or altered by the Jews, and elucidate the meaning of the original Hebrew to the Latins. No one is forced to read it, should they not wish to. Let them drink the old wine with contentment, and if they like, disdain our new." In spite of these dissensions, Augustine carefully and sympathetically followed the scriptural work of the aged master until his death. In The City of God, he praised Jerome's commentary upon David. He more than once consulted the learned exegete, and finally applauded the supreme battle which the indomitable old man waged against the growing heresy of Pelagius. The commentary upon the Epistle to the Galatians belongs to the scriptural studies which fill Jerome's life. In 406, he finished the explanation of the 12 minor prophets with a commentary upon the prophecy of Amos, and in a preface to the second book of this commentary, he weighed the advantages and disadvantages attendant upon old age. Thank you for joining me on this part 2 of chapter 6 and part 1 of chapter 7 of the life of St. Jerome. I hope all of you have a great night or morning or day, and may God bless you all. Peace out.